Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of Explore and Engage with Anam. My friends, the question that I'm asking in today's episode is the following. Is Kansas City the new sanctuary city? Now this question may come to you as a shock, and so let me discuss this. This is what I'm going to be talking about. Is Kansas City the new sanctuary city? Don't be shocked, because what I'm going to be presenting to you are facts. I'll share with you the facts, and then you can draw your own conclusion if you think that Kansas City is the new sanctuary city. Now, obviously, there's one more thing that I'm going to be discussing is why are Democrats obsessed about helping migrants? Why do they focus so much on the illegal immigrants? Why are the left-wing politicians, they are keeping everything aside and focusing on the migrants? Their biggest priority seems to be the migrants. Why is that the case? So I'll be discussing these, so please continue listening to this podcast episode, and obviously share with me your thoughts after you listen to the episode. If you disagree with me, if you agree with me, please reach out and let me know what your views are. So my friends, the first question is Kansas City the new sanctuary for the migrants? Is it the new sanctuary city? It's an interesting question. Now, who could have thought that I would be asking this? Who could have thought, right? When we think of a sanctuary city, when I mention the word sanctuary city, what are the first things that come to mind? Border crisis comes to mind, illegal immigration, people crossing the southern border, entering the United States, violating our nation's laws and rules. That's what comes to mind, right? Sanctuary city, border crisis comes to mind. If I ask you to think about a sanctuary city, what is the first city that will come to your mind? What is the first city that you'll think of if I ask you to name a sanctuary city? Now, if you have been paying attention to current affairs, if you have been paying attention to the ongoing crisis at the southern border, if you have been paying attention to the politics surrounding the border issues, then I think you may be mentioning either Chicago or New York, both of which are sanctuary cities. You may be thinking about the state of California as a whole, because California is a sanctuary state. In fact, Illinois too is a sanctuary state. We do talk about Chicago, which is a sanctuary city, and a sanctuary city that I talk about frequently on this podcast. But the entire state of Illinois is a sanctuary state. So if I ask you to think about a sanctuary community for illegal immigrants, you're probably going to think about Chicago. You're probably going to think about New York. You may think about the state of California. But would you think about Kansas City? Now, I'm not saying that Kansas City is the new sanctuary city. I'm not saying that. But I'll share with you some information that will show you that Kansas City may be on a path to becoming a sanctuary city. Okay? So Kansas City is a Democratic-leaning city. It's a Democratic-leaning city, and it's kind of hard to think about Kansas City as a Democratic-leaning city, given the fact that the state of Missouri is quite Republican. It's quite a conservative state. I love Missouri. I love Missouri. It's a wonderful state, great state, conservative state, Republican state. You can call it a red state. I think it is a red state. And if you look at the elected officials, the prominent elected officials in the state of Missouri, then you'll see that they're all Republicans. Think about the two U.S. senators. There's U.S. Senator Josh Hawley, and then there's U.S. Senator Eric Schmidt, both Republicans. Think about the governor. The governor of the state of Missouri is Mike Parson. He's a Republican. So you've got two U.S. senators, Republicans, a governor, Republican, and then the Attorney General. The Attorney General of Missouri is also a Republican. But in Kansas City, there's a Democrat mayor. We're talking about a red state, Missouri, Republican, but in the city, in Kansas City, there's a Democrat mayor named Quinton Lucas. And Quinton Lucas says that migrants who are in New York City are welcome to move to Kansas City for jobs. Oh my God. I mean, this is unbelievable, right? What's your reaction? As you are listening to this, what's your reaction? Do you think this is shocking? I said, did I say don't be shocked? I don't know what I said at the start of this podcast episode, but listen, don't be shocked. I'm gonna present to you some facts, okay? And you know, the thing is, a lot of things are happening these days that we may find shocking. I hear shocking news so frequently that, you know, I'm trying to not be shocked anymore. I mean, since 2021, since Joe Biden came to office, there have been so many shocking breaking news updates pertaining to domestic issues as well as international issues. So much of shocking news updates that I try not to be shocked anymore. You know, I think I'm reaching that state of mind where, you know, I won't be shocked anymore, because bad news after bad news after bad news. You look at the economy, everything's going in the wrong direction. You look at the border, everything's going in the wrong direction. You look at supply chain, we still have supply chain crisis. I mean, you look at the world, you look at, you know, the Indo-Pacific region, you look at Middle East, so much of shocking things are taking place. You look at, you know, the Ukraine-Russia situation. I mean, so much of shocking things are happening, both inside the United States and around the world, that I am reaching that point at which I will not be shocked anymore, okay? Like, let's not be shocked, because we have been seeing a flood of bad news for a few years now. So let me go back to what I was saying about Kansas City. Quinton Lucas, the mayor of Kansas City, he says that migrants who are in New York City are welcome to move to Kansas City for jobs. Reportedly, Quinton Lucas, the mayor of Kansas City, he's working with New York City Mayor Eric Adams and Denver Mayor Mike Johnston to ease the migration pressure in those cities. I mean, why is Quinton Lucas, the mayor of Kansas City, working with New York City and Denver mayors to try to ease the migration pressure in those cities? I mean, Quinton Lucas is the mayor of Kansas City. Why is he worried? Why is he worried about New York City? Why is he worried about Denver? He should be worried about Kansas City. His priority should be keeping Kansas City safe. His priority should be ensuring that people in Kansas City are able to live in peace. Why is Quinton Lucas worried about what's happening in New York City, what's happening in Denver? I mean, talk about, well, somebody might ask me, hey, Tausif, you are sitting in Madison, Wisconsin, but you're worried about New York City, you're worried about Chicago, you're worried about Denver. Why? Well, because I am a public policy analyst by training. I am involved in politics. I am an informed citizen. I try to stay informed. I love this country. And I have a podcast in which I discuss social and political issues, both domestic and international. That's why I talk about these issues. I am not an elected official. At this very moment, as I'm recording this podcast episode, I am not an elected official. I'm not the mayor of a city. I don't serve on a city council. I don't serve on a county board. I'm not the governor of a state. I'm not a U.S. senator. I'm not a member of Congress. I am not an elected official. I am a podcaster. I am a writer. I am a public policy analyst. I do political commentary. And so obviously I'll talk about a range of issues. And it's not just immigration. I talk about other things. I talk about public safety. I talk about energy policy. I have written, op-eds and letters to editors. My writings have been published. I don't know what the latest number is. I think it's 103, 104, maybe like 103, more than 100. Let's just say more than 100 letters to editors and op-eds that I have written have been published in many newspapers in this country. And so, of course, I'll talk about these issues. But Quinton Lucas, he's the mayor of Kansas City. He has been elected by the people of Kansas City to solve Kansas City's problems. Why is he working with New York City Mayor Eric Adams and Denver Mayor Mike Johnston to ease migration pressure in those cities? Why is Quinton Lucas trying to ease migration pressure in New York, in Denver? Why? I mean, if Quinton Lucas is listening to my podcast, I don't know if he's listening to my podcast, but if he is, I know many people listen to my podcast. So if Quinton Lucas, the mayor of Kansas City, is listening to my podcast, then I really want him to think about this. Why is he trying to ease migration pressure in New York City and in Denver? Quinton Lucas should be focusing on Kansas City. And okay, so whenever this migration pressure and easing migration pressure is mentioned, when I learned about this, what Quinton Lucas is trying to do, you know what immediately came to my mind? I immediately remembered when Eric Adams asked for a decompression strategy. Remember that? Eric Adams, he called for a decompression strategy. And by that, what he meant was a strategy to spread illegal immigrants all over the country. We know that illegal immigrants, many, thousands and thousands and thousands, many thousands, have been going to New York City, have been going to Chicago, have been going to Denver, because those are, Chicago and New York, obviously two big sanctuary communities. And that's why illegal immigrants have been going to those communities. And I kept saying that, hey, maybe the city leaders in New York should declare that New York will no longer be a sanctuary city. I said the same in case of Chicago. I said the city leaders should say that Chicago will no longer be a sanctuary city. But the New York City leaders did not do that. The Chicago city leaders did not do that. Obviously, in both places, in both Illinois and New York, there are some conservative leaders who support strong border and who support border security, and they don't want to see illegal immigrants flooding into our country. But we also know that the conservatives are not the majority in New York. They are not the majority in Illinois. So the left-wing politicians in Chicago, in New York City, they did not remove the sanctuary city designation from their cities. And so more illegal immigrants continue to pour in, and they still continue to pour in, and they go to New York and they go to Chicago, through the southern border. The illegal immigrants enter our country and they go to New York, they go to Chicago looking for sanctuary. And so when Eric Adams, he started realizing that the sanctuary city policy is really causing tremendous challenges for the city, he asked for a decompression strategy. But by that he meant that the federal government, and this is what Eric Adams wanted, he wanted the federal government to spread illegal immigrants all over the country. Okay? And so I think the mayor of Kansas City, Quinton Lucas, I think he's working with the leaders in Chicago and Denver. He's working with the leaders in Chicago and Denver to, in a way, implement that decompression strategy, maybe in a smaller scale. And so what the mayor of Kansas City is asking for, he is asking for migrants to move to Kansas City. And that's what he said. He said that the migrants who are in New York City are welcome to move to Kansas City for jobs. So this is sort of a decompression strategy in a smaller scale to have New York City migrants move to Kansas City. Okay? So reportedly, Mayor Quinton Lucas also said that in Kansas City's 2024-25 budget, $1 million, a sum of $1 million was earmarked for short-term housing, for healthcare and job training programs for refugees and migrants. Think about it. In Kansas City's 2024-25 budget, a sum of $1 million was earmarked for short-term housing, healthcare, and job training programs for refugees and migrants. Well, let me tell you, if the migrants, if they start pouring into Kansas City, the city is going to need a lot more money than $1 million US. If they start pouring in, it is not going to be good news for the city. It is not going to be good news for the city. And $1 million, it's probably not going to be enough. Look at Chicago. Look at what they did in the city of Chicago. Reportedly, the city of Chicago's already allocated approximately $300 million to be spent on the illegal immigrants. $300 million. And on top of that, the city leaders just approved allocating $70 million more. $70 million in additional funding for the migrants. 300 million plus 70 million. I mean, look at what kind of money is being allocated and spent on the migrants in Chicago. And New York, oh my God, New York, it is estimated that New York may end up spending billions of dollars on the migrants. So sanctuary city policies don't work. Sanctuary city policies lead to financial problems. Sanctuary city policies lead to unrest in the community. Obviously, there's unrest. There are people in New York who are opposing the sanctuary city policy, who are opposing illegal immigration. There are American citizens in Chicago who are opposing illegal immigration. And the left-wing politicians, they continue to spend more and more and more money on the illegal immigrants. So looking at Kansas City, when Mayor Quinton Lucas says that the city, in the budget, a sum of $1 million was earmarked for short-term housing, healthcare and job training programs for refugees and migrants? Well, let me tell you, if migrants start pouring into Kansas City, $1 million is not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough. Look at Chicago. Let me repeat, $300 million plus additional funding of $70 million. And I won't even mention California. I don't know how much California is spending on the illegal immigrants. It's unbelievable. And this is unfair. This is unjust. Because the American citizens, they don't want their tax dollars to be spent on illegal immigrants. They don't want American resources to be spent on illegal immigrants. We have needs in our community. There are many American citizens who are homeless. There are many American citizens who are at risk of homelessness. There are many American citizens who are suffering because of food insecurity. There are many American citizens who are suffering because of inflation. And what about the American veterans? There are American veterans who need help. They need medical services. They need mental health services. They need financial support. Many veterans who served our country, they served our country and now they are suffering. They have financial problems. They have healthcare problems. They need help. So instead of helping the veterans, instead of helping the American seniors, instead of helping the American children who are living in poverty, the Democrats are busy allocating more and more and more and more and more money, taxpayer money, for the illegal immigrants. And so now when I hear about Kansas City, and when I hear about Mayor Quinton Lucas working with New York City mayor and working with Denver mayor to ease migration pressure in those cities, I just want to ask, why is Mayor Lucas trying to invite this crisis? Why is Mayor Lucas trying to invite this crisis, this illegal immigration problem, to Kansas City? Let me say it again. If the migrants start pouring into Kansas City, it will be devastating. It will be devastating for Kansas City, and it'll be devastating for the state of Missouri. It'll be devastating for the state of Missouri. So, I don't know what Quinton Lucas is trying to do. Going back to the question, is Kansas City the new sanctuary city? I think Quinton Lucas is trying to turn Kansas City into a sanctuary city. Well, it is unbelievable. And let's just talk about local government. How did it happen that in the Kansas City budget, the 2024-25 budget, there's a sum of $1 million earmarked for the migrants? Who made this decision? Who made this decision? This is unbelievable. Local government is extremely important. And local government officials, they should prioritize the American citizens and the legal immigrants living in that city. Instead, in the city's budget, a sum of $1 million was earmarked for the migrants. This is unbelievable. This is unacceptable. So Quinton Lucas, clearly, it seems he's trying to turn Kansas City into a sanctuary city. And if that happens, if Quinton Lucas succeeds in his efforts, it is going to be devastating for Kansas City. It'll be devastating for the state of Missouri. And let me tell you, the Missouri Lieutenant Governor had a comment about this. He said that cities like Denver and New York City should not be the model for Missouri. That is absolutely correct. New York City and Denver should not be the model for Missouri. It doesn't make sense why Mayor Lucas of Kansas City is trying to turn Kansas City into New York City. Kansas City should never be New York City. City leaders all across the country should learn from the mistakes that the New York City leaders made and continue to make. People should study New York City and learn what not to do. Don't be like New York City. Now, I have to say this. New York City, once upon a time, was a great city. It was a great city, but because of left-wing policies, because of the Democrats, the city is now in crisis. So other cities across the country, they should not be like New York City. They should look at New York City's mistakes. They should look at New York City's bad policy making and learn and say that, hey, we're not going to be like New York City. We cannot afford to be like New York City. For every community, public safety should be the number one priority. Maintaining streets and roads and bridges and highways should be the priority. Ensuring cleanliness in the community should be the priority. We need clean communities, clean roads, clean streets. Cutting red tape and creating an environment in which businesses can thrive should be the priority. Create an environment in which people can succeed, in which businesses can thrive, in which economic growth can happen. Create a community like that. These should be the priorities. Instead, Mayor Lucas is focusing on earmarking public funds for the migrants. He's trying to entice migrants from New York City to come to Kansas City. That does not make sense. The Missouri Attorney General, Andrew Bailey, he opposed this idea of inviting migrants to Kansas City. In fact, Missouri's Attorney General said that in the state of Missouri, it is a felony to knowingly transport an illegal alien. He said that he will take legal action against anyone found to be in violation of these statutes. He further said, the Missouri Attorney General, Andrew Bailey, he further said that rather than inviting illegal aliens in, Mayor Lucas should join the Attorney General in upholding the rule of law. And that is a great message, my friends. Uphold the rule of law. Respect law and order. Don't invite illegal aliens. I hope that the people of Kansas City will reject illegal immigration. I hope the people of Kansas City will oppose Kansas City Mayor's proposal. Reject illegal immigration. Oppose Kansas City Mayor's proposal. Don't invite illegal immigrants from New York City and from Denver. My friends, Kansas City, I think, is a beautiful city. I visited Kansas City a few years ago. Well, time flies. It's been years since I've visited Kansas City. I would love to visit again. My mother and I, we were going from Madison, Wisconsin to Dallas, Texas. And on our way, we went by car. So I drove. And on our way, we stopped at Kansas City. And my mother and I, we stopped at a cafe in Kansas City and we had refreshing beverage, some food, and we had a great time. The drive was lovely. And as I said, we were on our way from Madison, Wisconsin to Dallas, Texas. Kansas City, let me tell you, friends, it's an amazing city. That was my observation. Although I didn't stay there for a few days. We just made a quick stop. We drove through the city. We loved it. And, you know, the people seemed very nice. The city seemed very clean. I'm sure Kansas City has challenges. Every city has challenges, right? It's not a perfect world. Every city has challenges. Here in Madison, Wisconsin, we have problems that we need to solve. But from my observation, I can tell you that Kansas City, it seems a very nice community. And it's important to keep Kansas City safe. Focus on the needs of the community. and this is a message for the city leaders, focus on the needs of the community, combat crime, make the community safe, and just, it's important to focus on the American citizens and the legal immigrants living in Kansas City, and it's important to reject illegal immigration. Focus on the people of Kansas City. Help ensure that the city is safe, that the city is clean, that the city has an environment in which people can succeed, and reject illegal immigration. If migrants start flooding into Kansas City, then the city will start facing the same crisis that New York City and Chicago and Denver are all facing. My friends, let me tell you that the border crisis is getting worse every single day. I was reading a post on X, formerly known as Twitter, and the post was written by Bill Melugin of Fox News, and he posted that according to CBP sources, there were over 7,000 encounters at the southern border yesterday. 7,000 encounters. Think about it. 7,000 encounters. So thousands and thousands and thousands of people are coming into our country illegally every single day. This is happening every single day. And the numbers vary. But even if the numbers go down a little bit, there are still thousands of people coming in through the southern border illegally every day. And the 7,000 is quite a high number. And this is why it was reported. I read this post on X, formerly known as Twitter. I always have to mention that because I know that some people still call it Twitter just because people have called it Twitter for so long, but it's now called X. The app is now X. And so I was reading a post on X that informed me that there were over 7,000 encounters at the southern border yesterday. Just imagine 7,000 encounters at the border in one day. This crisis, my friends, this crisis is getting worse. It's getting worse every single day. So if you hear about it in the news, you know it's getting worse. If you don't hear about it in the news, you must still understand it's getting worse every single day. I know that when you turn on the TV now, most of the news these days is about the conflict in the Middle East. And there's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of tension in the Middle East. I understand that. There's a lot of tension in the Middle East. There's growing concerns about the crisis in the Middle East, the conflicts in the Middle East. And so when you turn on the TV nowadays, you see a lot of news about the Middle East. And also there's a lot of news about Ukraine. There's a lot of news about foreign aid and U.S. involvement. Is the United States going to provide funding to foreign countries? There's a lot of debate. There's a lot of commentary. People share different views, different thoughts. And so these are the things we hear about a lot in the news these days. But don't forget the border crisis. Yes, there's news about Middle East. Yes, there's news about Ukraine. And you may hear about the Indo-Pacific region. And those are all important news. And we must be paying attention to all of that. But don't forget about the crisis that we are facing in our own country, in the United States. Don't forget about the border crisis. Each day, each hour, the crisis keeps getting worse. And American cities are suffering. And so when Kansas City, when I hear news about Kansas City that Mayor Quinton wants to invite migrants to Kansas City for jobs. I mean, let me tell you, Kansas City must not allow migrants to pour into the city. Kansas City must not invite this crisis. Let's talk about sanctuary city Chicago. The city of Chicago is facing rising crimes, and the situation is likely going to get worse because of illegal immigration. Just recently, Chicago police asked several neighborhoods to be on alert after reportedly, this is a shocking report, after 17 armed robberies took place over the course of 3 days. That's according to news reports. 17 armed robberies took place over the course of 3 days in the city of Chicago. Chicago definitely has a lot of problems, and unfortunately, the problems will likely get worse because of illegal immigration. My friends, Chicago is not that far from where I live. I live in Madison, Wisconsin, which is in southern Wisconsin. Madison is a city in southern Wisconsin. It's the capital of Wisconsin, southern Wisconsin. And Chicago is not that far because Illinois is the neighboring state. So depending on the time of the day, depending on how busy the traffic is, I could get to Chicago in 3 hours. Okay? Now traffic, depending on traffic, it may take a little less or more anyway. But 3 hours approximately. If I start driving now, I will be in Chicago in 3 hours by car. And I keep telling people that I want to visit Chicago. I have visited Chicago many times. Many times. I don't know how many times. Many times. Over all these years that I've lived in southern Wisconsin. It's not that far. You just get in the car, you start driving, and you'll be in Chicago. Of course, you have to pay toll as you're driving because, the highway charges tolls. Anyway, I want to visit Chicago, but the crime situation in the city makes me worried. Every time I say to myself, I want to go to Chicago, then I think about the crime. I think about the robbery. I think about the theft. I think about the violence in the city, the shootings. And then I get worried. And I just keep postponing my plan. I keep postponing my plan of visiting Chicago. I want to visit Chicago, but I just say, you know what? Maybe later, maybe not yet. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm sure there are many other people out there who think twice, maybe thrice, maybe 4 times about visiting Chicago. Because people understand, when they pay attention to the news, people understand it's not safe to visit Chicago. Now, somebody might say, oh, so many people are living in Chicago, and you're saying it's not a safe place, then why are so many people living there? Well, let me tell you, yes, Chicago is one of the largest cities in America, and a lot of people live there. But a lot of people are very unhappy about the situation in Chicago. It's really hard for people to pack up and move, especially for somebody who was born and raised in Chicago, or maybe who lived in Chicago for a decade or 2 decades or more than 2 decades or for several decades. It's not easy to just pack up and move. When people live in a certain city or a village, they grow roots. Like I have lived in Madison, Wisconsin for many years. I don't know what the future holds. I may move to a different city, or I may spend all my life in Madison. I don't know what the future holds. But I've lived in this city for many years, and I love this city. I love Madison, Wisconsin. So I understand that Madison has challenges. There are issues, there are problems. But I can't just pack up and leave. People don't do that. People become a part of the community in which they live. People have friends. People have neighbors. People have, their professional circle. People develop an emotional attachment with the place in which they live. They get to know the grocery stores. They get to know, they enjoy the parks, and they develop an emotional attachment to all the places they visit, the cafes, the restaurants. And so it's not easy for people to just pack up and leave. So I know there are many people in Chicago who are struggling, who are not happy with the crime situation. They are not happy with the way the local government is running things in Chicago. But those people, they can't just pack up and move. It's not that easy. And people always try to improve their surroundings. That should be our goal. Like, I live in Madison, Wisconsin. When I see problems in the city, I write about it. I talk about it. As a public policy analyst, I think about the ways in which we can improve things. How can we address the problems? You have to engage in conversation with your local leaders. You have to talk to the members, the other people living in your community. If crime is going up, try to understand what's causing the problem. How can we combat crime? How can we support the men and women of law enforcement in our city, in our state? What message should we have for our elected officials? What should we tell them? What should be our ask? So people don't just pack up and leave. When there's a problem in the community, in the neighborhood, in the city, in the state, the proper thing to do should be to try to fix that problem. And if you see that your leaders are not taking proper action, then elect new leaders. And so when I say that I'm afraid to visit Chicago, I understand there are people living in Chicago, many, many people living in Chicago. It's a very big city. And those individuals, they are in Chicago, but many of them are struggling. They're struggling financially. They're struggling because they became victims of crimes. They're struggling because cost of living in Chicago is going through the roof. They're struggling because they feel that their voices are not being heard by the elected officials. But still, people can't just pack up and move. I know that people do move, but that's not the solution for everyone. That's not the solution for everyone. Most people will try to stay in a place and try to solve those problems through collective effort, through raising awareness, through engagement with public officials. Share your concerns, share your thoughts. I don't live in Chicago, but I care about Chicago, which is why I talk about that city on my podcast a lot. I talk about Chicago, I talk about New York, but I don't live in Chicago, I don't live in New York. But I care about both of those cities because those are American cities. Chicago and New York used to be great American cities, but now because of Democrat policies, those cities are suffering. But I, as an American, although I live in Madison, Wisconsin, I am an American. And so it is my goal to try to raise awareness, to try to talk about the problems, and to try to solve the problems so that New York City can be a great city again. So that Chicago can be a great city again. You can say, make New York City great again. You can say, make Chicago great again. We have to address these problems. So right now, I postponed my visit to Chicago, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to go there. I'm just worried. And I have the option of not going, but people who live in that city, they can't just pack up and move. They have to engage with their elected officials, share their concerns, and find solutions. And as I have said before, Mayor Brandon Johnson, as a mayor so far, his record has been extremely poor. He is failing to do his job because he is prioritizing illegal immigrants rather than focusing on American citizens and legal immigrants. And so, let me tell you, if crimes continue in Chicago, there are many people who are going to stop visiting Chicago. I mean, see what the city council and the mayor did. I talked about it just a short while ago. They allocated $70 million in additional funding for the migrants rather than focusing on combating crimes. So I want to ask the question, why are the Democrats, hear the question, why are the Democrats so obsessed about helping migrants? Why are these left-wing politicians, the Democrats, so obsessed about helping migrants? Why are they focusing on the migrants? Why are they not focusing on the American citizens? Have you thought about it? The Democrats, they are using our tax dollars and giving more and more services to the migrants. And I'm speaking as an American citizen. I know I'm not a New York City resident. I know I'm not a Chicago resident. But I am an American citizen. And it just breaks my heart when I see that American tax dollars are being spent on the illegal immigrants. The Democrats are taking American tax dollars and giving more and more and more money to the migrants. They are spending tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, and more on the migrants. And the question is why? Why are the Democrats so obsessed about helping the migrants? What is it about the migrants that make the Democrats focus on them? My friends, some of you may know the answer already. The Democrats, they want to create a new voter base. The Democrats, they want to create new voters. The ultimate goal of the Democrats is to somehow extend voting rights for the migrants. In New York City, the left-wing politicians are already working hard to extend voting rights to non-citizens. Let me tell you, only American citizens have the right to vote. Voting is a right as well as a responsibility for the American citizens. Naturalized citizens, natural-born citizens. Citizens, U.S. citizens have the right and the responsibility to vote. Non-citizens don't have the right to vote. And what the Democrats are trying to do is they are trying to disenfranchise American citizens by giving voting rights to non-citizens. And so, if the Democrats succeed in their efforts, they may end up giving voting rights to non-citizens, legal non-citizens, as well as migrants and American people. The American people must never allow that to happen. Protect your voting rights. Voting rights are only for U.S. citizens, natural-born citizens and naturalized citizens. Freedom-loving Americans must never allow the Democrats to extend voting rights to non-citizens and the migrants. In 2022, Senator Chuck Schumer proposed giving a pathway to citizenship for millions and millions of illegal immigrants. That was in 2022 that he proposed that. He proposed a pathway to citizenship. Can you imagine that? A U.S. senator proposing a pathway to citizenship for millions of illegal immigrants. And what did I do? I wrote an op-ed opposing his proposal. As soon as I saw the news, as soon as I found out what Senator Chuck Schumer proposed, I said, I am going to raise my voice. I'm going to use the power of words. I'm going to use my writing skills to strongly oppose this proposal. So I wrote an op-ed which was published in the Western Journal. And in that op-ed, I opposed Senator Chuck Schumer's proposal. That was in 2022. My friends, we must speak up. We must not allow illegal immigrants to take away our rights and our freedom. Illegal immigrants must never have a pathway to U.S. citizenship. Never. There are many legal immigrants who come into this country and they work hard. People who wait for years to get their immigrant visa. People who complete paperwork, detailed paperwork. People who go through background checks. People who are patient. They wait patiently for their turn. They are the legal immigrants, people, foreign nationals who follow our nation's immigration laws and rules to enter the United States legally. And after coming here, they pursue education, they work hard, they pay taxes, they contribute to the growth and success of our country. They embrace America, and America embraces them. They become part of our society. And many legal immigrants, they successfully pursue U.S. citizenship. And after legal immigrants become U.S. citizens, they get the right to vote. So my friends, we must never allow illegal immigrants to take away our rights and freedom. We support legal immigration and we oppose illegal immigration. But the Democrats, they are trying to extend voting rights to non-citizens and to illegal immigrants, to the migrants. We must never allow that to happen. And so going back to the question of why are the Democrats so obsessed about helping migrants? That's because the Democrats are trying to create a new voter base. They are trying to create a new voter base, and by doing that, the Democrats are trying to consolidate their power. They are trying to strengthen their political position. The Democrats want to remain in power forever. And that's why they are doing this. They're allowing illegal immigration. They're allowing illegal immigrants to come into the country. And the Democrats are trying to extend voting rights to the migrants. Freedom-loving Americans must never allow that to happen. So I discussed 2 questions today. I talked about Kansas City. At the very beginning of this episode, I asked the question, is Kansas City the new sanctuary city? I don't know the answer. I'll let you think about it, but I've presented to you the facts, the updates. It is pretty obvious that Mayor Quinton Lucas of Kansas City, he's trying to invite illegal immigrants. And the city, as I mentioned, just to recap, the city also earmarked a sum of $1 million for short-term housing, healthcare, and job training programs for the migrants. So if Mayor Quinton Lucas succeeds in inviting migrants from Denver, from New York City, then Kansas City may become a sanctuary city. And so if you live in Missouri, if you live in Kansas City, I want you to understand the seriousness of this issue. Do not allow the mayor of Kansas City to turn your city into a sanctuary city for the illegal immigrants. Do not allow that to happen. Protect your rights, protect your freedom, protect your community, protect your tax dollars. Do not allow the mayor of Kansas City, do not allow the Democrats to turn Kansas City into a sanctuary city. And the other question, why are the Democrats obsessed about helping migrants? I already mentioned that. Now I'm going to repeat again. They are trying to create new voters. And that's why the Democrats are taking away our tax dollars And rather than helping American seniors, rather than helping American children living in poverty, rather than helping the American veterans, rather than helping the American people who are struggling because of inflation, rather than helping the American citizens, the Democrats are focused on helping the migrants. They are spending more and more money on the migrants. My friends, pay attention to what's going on in your surroundings. No matter where you live in the United States, pay attention to what's going on in your city, in your town, in your village, in your county, in your state. Pay attention to what the elected officials are doing. Find out if your local elected officials support sanctuary city policies. Find out if your local elected officials oppose illegal immigration. If any politician supports sanctuary city policies, you must reject that politician. You must not vote for that politician. Vote for those individuals who oppose illegal immigration. Vote for those individuals who believe in freedom, who believe in limited government, who believe in protecting our constitutional rights. Vote for freedom-loving Americans. Do not vote for a politician who supports sanctuary city policies for the illegal immigrants. So pay attention to your surroundings. Find out the positions of your local elected officials, your village board members, your town board members, your city council members, your county board members. Find out what their opinion is about illegal immigration. If they oppose illegal immigration, then you know that you've elected the right people. My friends, thank you for continuing to listen to my podcast. I really appreciate it. This podcast is about social and political issues, both domestic and international. I appreciate if you stay connected with me. Don't forget to visit my website, tausifanam.net. My email address is tausif@tausifanam.net. You will also find me on Facebook, on Instagram, on X, formerly known as Twitter. You will also find me on Truth Social. So my friends, thank you very much for continuing to listen to my podcast. I truly appreciate it, and I hope to be back again soon with a new episode. Well, hey, let me pause for a second. Let me tell you my position again. We must secure the southern border, and we must stop the influx of illegal immigrants. So with that, thank you for continuing to listen to my podcast. I hope to be back again soon with a new episode of Explore and Engage with Anam.